Okay, Valson, it is, sorry. Sorry about the blubbering your name there, but I'll
focus that better.
It's on the front dial. That's it.
give you something better to focus on here.
Alex, I didn't receive that movie until found it in my
See if you can
spam
focus that
folder
well.
this morning, so
Okay.
I put on, I'm not sure if we're gonna.
That looked good there.
Should be ALIX.
Anyway, this is in my workshop. My workshop is a 14 by 20 foot space in the basement, the corner of the basement. And this is my favorite tool. Actually, my router is my favorite tool of all my tools that I have. And I have the router. I built the table to house the router. So I do things like I try to make cabinet doors or reproduce cabinet doors that get ruined or whatever. And some of the outdoor planter boxes, things like that. I do like edge profiling and stuff like that. So right now I'm using a router a lot. I'm trying to get into making boxes. So I'm just practicing on that. So I have that's one of my favorite tools. I have the box. I'm also making another cabinet also. I have two cabinets. I actually took a cabinet that I made for a fish tank holder that I didn't like too much, so I chopped it and so I put my router back in there, so I'm going to use that. Yes, Ralph?
For the people who might not be able to see it, tell them about your zero clearance thing. That's pretty good.
Oh, that fence on there for the router fence, zero clearance fence on there. I made that. Someone else had inspired me to make that last year. I saw of all the jigs and everything. Somebody made one where you actually had that insert between the fence, the adjustable fence part, and you could actually do different profiles with different router profiles. So it could actually be flush with the router bit. So when you're pushing up against, you get less chip out and things like that. And I can push it back and forth. And I made one cheap one, and this one is a lot better, a bigger improvement. And I also have the my dust collection port in the back of it. So I'm sucking out the dust from the top part, and also I have another port just underneath the router table that's collecting from underneath the cabinet, inside the cabinet.
Having that zero clearance like that, does that create any problems with your dust collection?
No, because that back port is open to the, there's zero clearance over here, up against the bit, but back here, I should have took a picture. This is open, so all the dust that's collected in here gets sucked back this way. So I hardly get any dust coming out on this side. And also I have another, the other tubing comes from behind the cabinet, so underneath here is collecting from down here where it's open.
That's the part right below the router bit. Is that open there?
That's partly open. That particular router has two sections.
Right there,
Yes, I think it's open on this side, so you can tighten the router bit, the nuts on the router bit. It's not open on this side also.
So part of your dust goes right down that hole in.
Yeah, so it'll collect from this side. I'm having this up this way. So some of it is actually collecting inside the base. So there's not that much dust that actually goes underneath there. So I'll just shop back it after it's finished. But all the dust either gets collected down inside there, or it's from the back of that particular part.
How do you hold the zero clearance in place?
That part, it's there's nuts with the screw nuts that's attached there. Right, I have this track here for my miter gauge, but back on here, on this side here, there's the smaller T-tracks.
I'm talking about the
It's
replaceable part.
45 degrees.
This part?
Yeah.
Oh, this part is actually pressed up against here, and I tighten this with these.
Oh, okay.
So 45 degree valve.
Right, 45 degree slides.
Yeah, there's
It's
a
tight. So it-
45 degree right there and there
Cool.
that
Yeah.
allows you to lift it out.
Yep. You can actually, after you loosen it, you slide it back up, but it's actually tightened. It tightens it, it doesn't move. There's no movement at all. And it hardly touches anyway, because your router bit, this part here actually fits the profile of the router bit.
Yeah.
So I cut that part. So there's nothing to move, and this part is flush. So it slides there. So
I imagine it helps you put your router bit back to where you had it, so it's pretty good.
yeah, but I usually well that's why I want to get another table, because I actually want to keep that one set and have it set to whatever height.
You need to
Have
take
another
whatever
table.
router you have.
Yeah. You got 5 counters, so you got 5 tables.
I'm working on that.
So I had a door underneath here before, and then the router table was too high. It didn't match the other tables in the workshop, so I ended up chopping it 4 inches or whatever, so I had to remove the door back here. And I had like doors here to cover the bits in the storage areas.
What version table is this?
That's the...
No, what I'm saying is, I'm on my like
My
third
revision?
table that I built.
That's probably my third.
Yeah.
So I have another one in the works.
It looks like you learned some lessons along the
Yeah,
way.
so this one is for my stationary, but I have another one I'm making for the my plunge router, the Triton plunge router. So I'm gonna have like an extra part to to
Right.
crank it up or whatever.
That looks great.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, while you're up there, let's go to your next shot there.
All right, so in the main part of the shop,
Hey, it's my song.
I don't know if I was like the first one because I have the sloppiest shop or but I have a lot of stuff.
Not that far.
All right, so 14 by 20. So in the center of my shop is my table saw, 10-inch table saw Craftsman contractor series. And I have in the corner there, I have my dust collector. And I just have it plumbed to the my miter saw and the table saw. So over here I have like 2 ports. I have one connection on the bottom of the table saw, and I've rigged the plumbing to go up top to collect the dust on this side. But what I want to do is actually make a connection to the guard there to suck out all the dust, because I'm getting a lot of dust coming into my face.
I think what I call a shark that's really good.
Yeah.
Shark,
Oh, okay.
yeah, this man.
Yeah, so I saw some handmade ones, some homemade ones and stuff. I might try to get some ideas from that and make it.
What kind of dust collector do you have?
It's 2 horsepower. I got it from Harbor Freight,
Yeah.
like a 70-gallon dust collector.
You run it 220 volt or 110?
110.
Yeah, I do too. I haven't tried it on 220 yet.
So
Yep.
hold up. Yeah, so back on the other side of the table, I have my little scroll saw that I'm trying to learn. I haven't been practicing using it enough. And then the chop saw in the back table, the 14-inch band saw. My little entertainment center up here with TV and VCR and DVD player.
So you watch it while you're operating your table saw?
I know it's a game, when football is on Sundays. Background of sometimes just do my music, DVDs, things like that. I mean the CDs, just have music in the background.
I must say, you're to be commended having the guard on your saw.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah,
think there's too many of us that,
Yeah, I'm afraid that I'm jumping my things and everything. And so on the side of the city, and I have a little sander, a little belt sander I have upside down to do sanding. So I need to get, I probably want to invest like in a disc sander eventually. Let's go to the other side, so you see it a little bit better. And then down here, okay, my 2 routers that I have there. And also right now I'm trying to learn how to do dovetail joinery. So I bought the Porter Cable jig to do some dovetails and stuff like that. I'm having a hard time.
Bob's a
So-
good guy in that.
What?
Bob's a good guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but the thing about it I didn't understand is like the jigs, I didn't understand how to really use it because I had to tweak a lot of things in order to get like good fitting and everything. So I started learning doing it by hand to actually understand what I'm doing, to understand like the orientation of everything, how the pins go into the tails and everything like that. And that guy who came in with the hand tools, Ken Klein, that kind of motivated me to actually learn how to do it by hand first before I try to figure out how to do it with a jig. So I'm getting a little bit better. I've been practicing, so that was a little piece on the table there that I just finished working with.
You trying primarily to do half planes or throughs?
I'm trying to do throughs.
Okay. Yeah, they are the toughest.
Yeah. Okay, go to the next slide. So over here I have my 34-inch radial drill press, and I've outfitted with a little bench, a little table on top of the original table part to house longer pieces. And I bought a clamping set, and actually, so I'm gonna put some one of those T-tracks and everything like that, so put some more clamps and stuff like that to hold my items better on there. See that? Okay, this shop here is 10 by 20. This shop is at my job. I'm a building manager and a laboratory manager at Agnes Scott College. So I do like little small repairs on instruments and things like that. Sometimes I'm asked to do like little small items, wood items for some of the my coworkers. So I've asked them to make a what was that? A mouse. What was that thing? A little mouse maze. Yeah, I built one of those for them. So I have my little workshop here with all the, like some of the tools. I brought my old scroll saw, 16-inch scroll saw. So I do like little items and stuff like that. Nothing major. So I actually have a place here to practice when I'm at work, so it's not just at home. Doors are closed, no windows or anything like that, so nobody knows I'm in there, so I'm just chopping away and doing stuff.
Get paid while you play, huh?
That's right, yeah. A small drill press, a little chop saw, a scroll saw, and that's it for that shop. And a little fume hood too, so I do like some spray painting of items or whatever. Major. I think that's it.
Thank you.
We'll try to get your name right next time.
Yeah, okay.
Whoops. Close something I shouldn't have. Okay, next up is Jimmy Rocker. Went over to take pictures over there a few days ago. Jimmy's got some. Jimmy, if you'd stand up and tell us
Okay.
a little bit about this.
Stay where I am and just point from here. My work area is a carport actually. It's about 500 square feet. Most of this today is going to be about the lathe setup and bandsaw. This is a lathe bench setup that I built that allows me to have two lathes on it. These are pretty old Craftsman tube bed lathe. This is the tube portion, and I have to thank two people for these. My first one on this side was given to me by Troy Carter, owner of Snellville Garage, a number of years ago, and then a couple of years ago our own Jim Myrick gave me this one. This was Jim's father's lathe. I know that Sears has made these had these for a number of years. They've been discontinued now, I believe. Rigid also put out one just like this under their name. I'll mention up front that these lathes have kind of three drawbacks as far as I'm concerned, but they work very well for me. The first one is that there's a piece of key stock fastened underneath the tube that maintains the tailstock and the banjo tool rest in the proper 12 o'clock position. And that key stock was fastened with pop rivets. I've modified that on both of these lathes and drilled and tapped the tube so that that's maintained firmly. What can happen if you have a major catch, it can separate that key stock from the tube. Also, let's see, that it had an old style open motor, which you have to keep blown out with air to keep it going good. And let's see, I named two. Oh, the other one is this tube was secured into the headstock by a set screw. On this particular model lathe, whose publication goes back to '72, it was through the bottom, which would have been very difficult to get to. And on this one over here, it was through the side from a position along here. This one I modified and drilled and tapped two holes in either side of the headstock to hold that tube securely. So they work real well for me. This lathe has been set up, we'll see some other pictures, to do a larger diameter piece than what it was made for. This was described as a 12-inch swing and currently shown with a 36-inch piece of spindle in it. This base was made by sandwiching two pieces of 3/4 plywood together, and it's on rolling wheels, of course. It has two containers of sand placed that underneath to give it some good weight. I've got a small sander upside down here that I use occasionally to tune up an edge on a tool. We'll see maybe some other pictures. I don't know which one Bob has edited in, but on this one, that's laid in the background, I removed the tube from the headstock, slid it back and fastened it down so that I could turn something greater than 12 inches. This is a platter blank that was turned in the demo last September here at the Turner Sig, and it's still curing for final turning for a demo coming up in a couple of months.
Jimmy, let's go on, and I'm sure I've got pictures of the other stuff there.
Okay. You can see the modified set screw in the bottom left of the headstock there. Yeah, this is where you see the tape on the two set screws that were used to hold the tube true.
Jimmy, is it, with that kind of construction, is it possible to find the right tube and extend that lathe?
I had looked around a number of places here locally to try to get that tube made so I could get about a 56-inch spindle in it, and I could not find anyone that would reasonably make me a tube to fit that.
Thank you, Paula, Jim.
Yes, it's a piece of tube stock, seamless tube.
Could you easily pair up the two tubes you have on the two lathes?
Say again?
Could you pair up the two tubes you have on those two lathes and make a longer one?
Well, I didn't want to, yeah, you could, Jack and I talked about it one time. He said, well, you can cut one off and weld it to it. I said, well, I really don't want to do that. I'd rather keep them like they are.
I wonder if you found another lathe from somewhere and took the tube off of it.
Yeah, that could be. This is the drive pulleys. It has 4 speeds going from like 870 to 3600. And you may or may not can tell in the motor, it's in what's called a cradle mount. It's mounted in rubber so that you can easily move these belts from one shift to the other.
Is the weight of the motor giving you the tension in it?
No, it's tensioned on a base. This shows the speeds that are available. And again, these are old lathes, but they have worked well for me. Let's see, that's, there you go. When I redid these on that new base, I placed them 2 inches higher than the bench itself. And you'll see a little bit that gives me potential to turn a fairly big circle.
Looks like I forgot to rotate all these.
This is showing the view where the tube can be pulled out of the headstock. In fact, I can reposition it to turn the spindle up to about 56, 57 inches. I have not done that yet. I'll have to have a spindle steady, but it's been set up to where I can do that. As I said, this was the 13.5-inch platter blank that we roughed out last year in a demo. Been curing this piece of pear. It was just put there for demo purposes. Just upside down mounted belt sander to have handy.
Use that just for dressing tools?
Not all the time. Sometimes I use it on flattening out a small piece of wood stock for some reason.
That's your sharpening system?
No.
No, that's in a little bit.
Underneath this, you'll see where all those screw holes where those pieces of plywood fasten together. There's a 5-outlet piece there. The main power cord is that large yellow one that goes into the receptacle. That's showing that we can go up to about 20-inch diameter. That tube bed shows that the banjo and the tool rest is cantilevered, so you can still turn what you want to there.
And I meant to delete out that first one.
I can use either the lathe, the light, the grinder, so forth. That large piece you saw on the lathe came from a large piece of pear, and it was about 15 inches in diameter. And I talked to Bob about where I could find a bandsaw that would I could cut more than 12 inches vertical, and we couldn't find anything. So I made a modification to my bandsaw. I took out the regular blade, upper blade guide assembly, and made a small piece to go in its place where I could run a piece about 14 inches through the bandsaw if I wanted a large diameter blank for a bowl or a platter.
Yeah, that other device that Jimmy's talking to is on the table of the saw there.
The existing bandsaws, wood bandsaws, you can get 12 inches fairly easy. But this device is just a angle clip. I have a piece of aluminum to back stop the blade, fastened to a piece of oak, and then that is fastened into the upper casting where the upper blade guide goes, like so. And that allows me to have about a 14-inch clearance for a large bowl or platter blade.
Yeah, what this depicts is he's removed the upper blade guide completely and put this piece in place. So that another view of it. And then that shows that you've gained 2 1/4 inches, which was just enough to get his blank into there.
Neat idea.
Mike, there's the grinding station.
You got a ladder to get to it?
Old school with extended legs to have it about the same height as the spindle height on the lathe. But,
That's what it is.
my work area has to also house 2 vehicles at the end of the day, so everything has to roll up against the wall.
That OSHA approved.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
12 gauge approval.
That's pretty slick.
Hey.
This, by the way, I normally have that lathe up against the wall, and there's an old chainsaw worn out bar with magnetic lamp attached, so it shines down where I need it when I'm turning. And I can rotate it to the right or left or slide the magnet up or down.
Stay by dad and get around.
Hey, throw it away, play you next time.
Yeah.
Don't shots like that. Jerry, we
By the way, you can buy that lamp here.
How about the chainsaw?
Okay, next up is Jerry Richards' son.
I use half a garage, also storing a car when the day ends, it all goes back to 1/2. This is a device that one of our speakers made here where you can cut tenons and stuff like that with. And I took the write-up on the web, and I built that router mounts where that big hole is there. You got adjustable both directions, so you can guide and lock in the depth and everything. Just another picture of it. Trying to get my wife to make these pictures look fun. Them cabinets, I built them since I retired, put up the whole stuff.
So when you get ready to use that thing, the router
I just mounted,
lays sideways, right?
it'll go ahead and be flat.
Yeah.
And that lip on it will hook on the side in front of my router table, and I can clamp it down so that. And you take probably a 12, 13 inch wide board, you can make grooves and all on it. That's my router table, my first one that I ever built. I added that front door there after learning how to put the double exhaust on the back for the inside of it and the top. Nothing fancy, but all out of the book.
Something I noticed on this thing, I noticed Jerry picked up on the clue somewhere along the line about drilling 3 holes in the bottom of that door. That does a magnificent job of sweeping the bottom of that dust cavity when you're drawing air into a router table.
I got a 4-inch duct on the bottom, and then I think it's 2 1/4, whatever it comes up over the top part of it. They couldn't get me one here, so I had went up and got one from Rockler. It was made to do that. And that's my old Craftsman saw. First base I built for it to work with. The thing on the end though there is a slide for cutting stuff. Neat place to store it. Nothing fancy.
Those are fold-up wings?
Yes.
Okay.
You can see the support on the other side. It came, there's one for both sides lay up flat. And that big white thing on the back there, I hook onto the back of my saw, the bar that runs across of it, give me an extended table out to the back. Give me a pretty good surface for cutting wide boards. And that's that tendon machine, I mounted up right there, mounted on the end of that fold-up table. Not much, but I'm proud of all of it. I got me an air conditioner heater that's just back in the spring. So now I can go out there anytime I want to work. And that's a table I built there that had 2 wings, 4 foot by 4 foot on each side of it. And since then I've destroyed that, building something else. But yeah, that's my sharpening system, is a grinder and extended arms on it for it. Again, Harbor Freight dust collector on there.
What's that contraption down there on the floor?
In the middle,
Yep.
that's just another sled I made for cutting small pieces where I can get a spare end on it good.
Okay.
And there's that same unit that's flat wide. It's got the clamps where you can mount the boards on the side. And it's the piece of wood on the end here is cooked right now because I bumped it. But anyhow, in the top of it, it's got a guide where you can tell. You put a zero pin in your router to know exactly where the corner of the board is that you're going to work on, so you know that. So you can set the adjustments. There's one on top. one on the side, so you know where your movement is back and forth, so you hit the same place. In fact, everything I got is from Harbor Freight, you know. My first compressor I had, and it may be in the picture, but I had to try it. What's all you guys work on things? I decided, well, I wanted to try the air sanders. Let me tell you, one of these small compressors won't hold up to it.
Yeah.
She went for about 10 minutes, and then that was it. Gone. So I went and bought that one. That's the DeWalt scroll saw I have. The Delta lathe, the router, the tendon, mortising machine up there, real small bandsaw. My son bought the DeWalt planer, 13-inch, another Harbor Freight drill and old miter saw that came from one of the neighbors. Built a hood on it so it could suck some of the dust.
Does that work pretty good?
Yeah. I've got a neighbor died and left some stuff, and I got a big fan that's a high-powered fan, and modified it so that I got this collection. I got a vent right behind the miter saw. And it comes down, and then in the fan got a big bag with a bag, air bag, micro bag, hooked it. So it has its own little private collection to that. And there's one of my orderly storage areas there that's on rollers. If need to be, I can pull it out. Find one of the big sheets are on the back, and all the small stuff in the front.
The one you need is on the back.
All
Or on the bottom.
and all that stuff out in front has to be moved to get to it, you know.
Or with you.
You can see the bag on the blower down at the bottom, and exhaust for it. So. It's on roll. Everything I have is on rollers except that one table there.
So that-
I think it was one of these. You know how they have these inflatable balloons and playing things.
Yeah.
I believe that's what it was from. It's got a hell of a suction to it. And in that bag, of course, collect the dust will go everywhere.
I remember Tommy was telling us one time he gets occasionally gets a call from an HVAC outfit where they've got blower fans from furnaces that they're taking out.
Yeah.
He goes, grabbed hold of them.
Well, I tried to build me one of them dust collecting units and use one of them, and I never could come up with a fan. And I tried that thing in it, and it didn't do no good. So. And there's my little sander and Morris machine. Looks like that's about everything. That would be laying flipped 45 degrees if we was using it. That table slides back and forth as you
Yeah, I see it now.
and then the big crank on the other end moves it left and right.
Hey, thanks. Okay, since George isn't here today, we'll save this for later. Go to Bob Aldea next.
Top.
There we go.
Want all my glasses?
I might need them.
Okay, the date on the entry slide is misleading. These pictures are about 7 years old, so there's been some changes. When I first started turning, this was my sharpening system, and I took an inexpensive Harbor Freight 1-inch belt sander. Added a carriage around it so that I could have the belt running away from me, and a platen to do chisels like skew chisels with a 15-degree bevel on one side. And I did use that for a while, and I still use it occasionally for other things. I think there's another picture later on showing it in a vertical position. There's the dovetails, which allow me to move the tool rest in and out from the belt. Essential when it's time to change the belt. I run anywhere from an 80 grit to a 3-micron belt on there, so I can polish as well as grind.
Where do you get belts that fine?
Internet.
Yeah.
It's a blue silicon compound of some sort, but it will essentially polish the edge on a skew, which is what I was originally doing with it.
Yep.
And there it is in the vertical normal position, same tool with the tool rest removed. So that served for a while until I finally replaced it with a typical 8-inch slow-speed grinder. This is an interior look at one of my homebrew blast gates. I used PVC pipe throughout, and this is a PVC coupling cut in two, a couple of pieces of MDF and some plastic laminate for the actual gate. So this is one of the more finished looking ones. There are some cruder ones scattered around the shop as well.
All these guys.
And there it is actually installed on a downpipe where I needed a small hose leading to my scroll saw. So I made an adapter with a piece of MDF and plugged in an old shop vac hose.
The flat door, what was it?
It's a piece of plastic laminate.
And do you press fit those on, or did you glue them?
It's a press fit onto the 4-inch pipe.
Okay.
Those are my clamp racks, just MDF with slots cut in them.
Way too neat, Bob.
Gets them up out of the way. I built this house in '96, and when I was laying out the basement, I was thinking I needed a senior apartment down there for my mother, possibly. So I limited myself to a shop that's about 14 by 16. And I have gradually started to spread beyond that, but things had to fit, and it was a little tight. That downspout that you're seeing on the left side of the picture was 3-inch at the time for a little bitty 4-inch joiner that I gave to George. It now is a 4-inch downspout, and there's a 6-inch rigid joiner sitting in place of it. Okay, there's my dust collector. That was one that was featured in Wood magazine some years ago. Uses a Penn State blower that was a portable blower. 1.5 horse, 800 and some odd cubic feet per minute. Advertised specs. Whole system, complete with blower, has about $450 invested or less. And it's a bit marginal, but it does do the job. It beats a dustpan and a broom, so I use it. It's plumbed to all of my tools, well, most all of them. That's an MDF cabinet with standard galvanized sheet metal you can pick up at Home Depot. 6-inch main pipe coming into the dust collector, which necks down to 4-inch throughout the rest of the shop. Okay, there's my 12-inch burner. It sits on a MDF cart, which gives me 4 feet of outfeed. Next to it on the right is an antique router table I made back in the 70s for my father's Craftsman router. What you see there is a rat's nest of hose fittings. On the top left is the back side of my router fence. There's a 4-inch fitting in the fence. There's also a 4-inch fitting to the box beneath the table saw wing, and that takes care of the router. It's currently hooked up to the planer. This one flex tube fitting is only about 7 feet from the dust collector, so it still has pretty good throughput. The one pipe down to the left is actually for the table saw evacuation. So all 3 tools are serviced by that one blast gate and that one flex hose. And there it is hooked up to the router table. A little bit better view of it. The planer has to slide under the table saw to get out of the way because there's not a whole lot of space around. Top right of the picture you can see a Delta air cleaner that I picked up some years ago. And off to the left is a torsion box MDF workbench and a couple of cabinets. That is my one and only workbench. There was no room to put it in the middle of the floor, so it's up against the wall. There's a homebrew floor sweep. Again, just some typical galvanized sheet metal from Home Depot. Find I don't use it much at all.
Would you do, hand form that?
Yeah.
Wow,
Good job.
pretty nice for
Thank
starting
you.
out with a plain sheet metal.
It's pop riveted together. That's the downspout. The vertical goes down to that floor sweep you just saw. The Y connection leads to a 2.5-inch hose, which is what I typically use instead of the floor sweep. And that will reach pretty much the entire shop.
What's the wire across the top?
Because I was doing PVC piping and I read some of the fear mongering, I decided to run a copper wire through all the piping so that it can all be grounded. Since that time, I don't believe it was necessary. It was a waste of effort. But there is a copper wire throughout all of my 4-inch piping.
But you know, when I handle my piping like that, by hand, that I can feel electrical charge myself.
You get a little static charge.
Get a static charge in it, yeah. So it's there.
Note on that, you should ever go to commercials. I had a insurance inspector come out one time, 2 guys, and they look for that. That's the first thing I look for, grounded exhaust system.
For your home shop?
No, I had a commercial shop,
Yeah,
small
yeah.
commercial shop as well.
Well, it's there, but I question the value of it at this point, but it is there.
Where do you hook the grounded in? What do you ground it to?
Water pipe. Some of the system is metal, most of it's PVC, so everything comes back to the metal. That's just another shot of the down flex hose that feeds the table saw, planer, and router. To the back top, metal cabinet for paints and thinners and such. And to the left of that is a deep sink, a standard laundry sink, in case you need a quick eye wash or just rinsing out brushes or whatever.
Wash the blood off your phone.
Yeah, and that's happened. Okay, that's some of the overhead piping involved. We're standing, taking this picture right next to the dust collector. So the first line going down is feeding the tools you saw before. The one to the left takes care of the joiner. The one that goes farthest out to the wall services my drill press and bandsaw. And the one to the right takes care of the floor sweep and the hose. The closest one that goes to the right is supposed to be servicing my miter saw, but it still hasn't gotten hooked up, and I still haven't made the hood for it.
What's the size of your main duct there, 6?
The main metal duct is 6, and then it necks down to 4. And this is not a healthy dust collector that's going to get all the superfine dust, but it beats sweeping. It does evacuate the dust that the tools produce, or the chips. And the air cleaner takes care of the finer stuff. And if I'm actually sanding, I'll put on a half-mast respirator.
Bob, how are you sealing the metal to the PVC joint there? A tape or something?
Yeah, most of the time it's just vinyl tape. There's a couple of places where I actually decided it was a permanent connection, and I used a silicone caulk. But most of this is intended to be able to take down and for clearing jams or for whatever purpose. So a lot of those connections are just press fit and then taped. All of the metal connections are screwed or riveted and then caulked to seal them up. You can't afford too many leaks in a marginal system like this. That's just another shot of the connections. They're not optimum. Wide sweep elbows are better for airflow, but I was constrained by space, and being a bit of a cheapskate, I wasn't willing to invest in the wide sweep connections. This is all sewer and drain pipe, by the way. It's not Schedule 40. So sewer and drain is much thinner, much lighter, easier to work with.
Your wire, your ground wire, does it run throughout the system or just hooked to the ends?
It goes everywhere throughout, because every piece of PVC pipe has some wire in it. That was copper antenna wire, is what it was sold for.
Is that a braided wire or solid?
It's braided.
Okay.
Have you had any trouble with chips and stuff catching on it inside the pipe?
Not to my knowledge. Airflow is still reasonable, and I haven't inspected the inside of these pipes. However, I did make a point of making sure that wire was snug up against the side, and in each piece of pipe, it exits the pipe through a small hole at the end of the pipe, and it's caulked.
Pull it tight.
This is my dehumidifier, and it sits up on top of the cabinet to get it out of the way, and the green hose hanging out the back of it allows it to dribble down into the sink below. So that takes care of draining. This is my drill press table. It's a couple of sink cutouts laminated together. It has a removable 4-inch piece of MDF in the center, so that when that gets chewed up, I can throw a new one in there. And the fence runs in a couple of pieces of T-track.
Well, it looks fairly recent in terms of age.
No.
No?
Well, it's more recent than some of the stuff, but you gotta remember, all these pictures are 7 years old.
No, okay.
So since that time, I've added a hose support to bring the vacuum hose up close to the bit when I'm drilling, and that whole thing's going to get replaced with 4-inch pipe to feed the bandsaw, because you can't get the chips out of a bandsaw through a 2-inch hose. When I decided to get into turning, I decided I needed a cabinet to put the lathe on, because storage was at a premium. So that was the bench that I built. It's all MDF construction. Piece of countertop that Jim McGrath brought in way back when. And that was my original lathe. It was a Jet 1018, I think is the... And some years later, Ron Brown needed one that size, so he swapped me his 1220 for my 1018. So then I had to add an extension to that table because it was about 12 inches too short. To the left is my Dremel scroll saw, and it sits on a real low tilted stand so that I could sit down in a regular folding chair when I was scrolling. I've got some disc problems, so standing at a scroll saw was out of the question. And that has casters on it so that I could drag it off to the scroll saw meetings way back when. To the right is a chop saw, miter saw, which is sitting on an old microwave cabinet my mother was ready to get rid of. My plan was to build a nice cabinet with wings and a hood for dust collection. However, that saw is still sitting on that cabinet. Was. So, not in that location, but still on that cabinet.
Works for
This is a metalworking vise bolted to some pieces of wood so that I can just simply hold it in my woodworking vise for those occasions when I need to beat on something really hard. It's another shot of the dust collector and the miter saw. That's an old 12-inch single bevel DeWalt. This is my router table fence. It's a copy of a CMT fence, just like the one that Alex did earlier. The only difference is I've got 4-inch pipe for dust collection, top and bottom. It pivots on a single point, and then there's a knob in the back that allows me to tighten it down, lock it in place. There's multiple pivot points drilled in this table saw extension so that I can adjust it for different ranges. Eventually I was going to upgrade that fence, but it hasn't been necessary. This is my saw blade storage. Again, it's just some tempered MDF, masonite in a MDF case, and that sits underneath the extension wing normally. So that holds about 8 blades. This is an end vise built onto that MDF workbench I mentioned. That's rock maple with a sliding piece for the 2 end dogs, just to minimize the amount of cranking I have to do. And it works pretty well. Not as fancy as a European bench, but adequate for my needs. This is a homemade tenoning jig, which I made, back in 70s or 80s to use on a Craftsman saw, and then I had to modify it for use on my Unisaw. But it works just like any tenoning jig, and it has dovetail slots for either a 45 or vertical fences to hold pieces.
Isn't it nice to have a standard 3/4 thing to slide in?
Well, yeah.
Old Craftsman is offside. Piece of my head is.
Well, this is a T-slot, which the Craftsman didn't have, but I didn't bother to make a T-bar for it. Not necessary.
Like you really got carried away on that knob over there.
I had time on my hands.
Determination.
It's a piece of pine and a T-nut and a little bit of filing. Okay, this is a pivoting jaw that goes in my woodworking vise so that if I have something off shape, I can clamp it without trying to rack the jaw. That required a glue up of the face piece that goes on the metal vise to provide an angled slot, and it's just a standard door hinge bent at 90 degrees on one wing, and the other wing is screwed onto this beveled piece of pine. I haven't used it often, but it's always there under the bench when I need it. By the way, that end vise clamping portion of the bench, which is all rock maple, cost about as much as the rest of the bench. The rest of the bench is just MDF. Okay, the table saw dominates my shop, and it has from day one. It's got a 55-inch fence on it. It has a 4-foot long extension out the back. And I can pretty much throw a sheet of 4x8 goods up on this table saw and cut it in any direction I want. To support the front end, while I'm beginning the cut, I made this brace out of some scrap pine I had laying around. And it just grabs a hold of the edge of the rip fence guide. That's about all there is to that. And typically the router fence sits there unless I'm doing larger pieces, and then I pull that off and the hose connections go with it, so I've got plenty of clearance.
The leg of that extension is hinged?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it just folds up and leans against the wall when I'm not using it.
That works pretty well, doesn't it?
Yep.
Did you make any provisions for keeping that from sliding sideways if you...
It has a clamp that grabs the lip of the rip fence guide, and that grabs pretty well. You can't see it, but between the two horizontal bars up next to the rip fence, there's a wing nut, and that pulls a screw up through a little piece of bent aluminum that clamps it in place so that it won't slide. But since once you get the piece up on the saw, you're only pushing in one direction,
Right,
so.
yeah. But just getting it up on there is...
Yeah, that can be challenging, especially MDF.
Yeah.
It's getting harder every year.
Oh.
I've gotten to where now, if I have to, I'll section it before I start cutting the smaller pieces.
That's gravity, Bob, it's getting stronger.
Yeah, that must be it. That must be it. This is the other end of the saw. You can see the extension wing. It's intended to fold down so that I can move the saw around. The first 16 inches are attached rigidly to the saw, and then the rest of it hinges with legs that fold. But there's so much junk underneath it, I never get to fold it. That cabinet that's sitting there on the floor finally got mounted up over the deep sink. Yeah, it's all French cleat hanging. That needs to rotate 90.
Ah.
This is one of the front supports on my wood rack, and that's inclined. What you see down towards the bottom is a little piece of wood tacked on there so that I can essentially lay a piece of sheet goods on this. There's one of those little wedges on each leg, so I can support a 4x8 sheet leaned up against these uprights and section it with a circular saw before I go to the table saw. So that's my panel saw. There's a larger view of it. You can see that sheet goods go in next to the wall. The wood rack is 8 feet long, so there's space to take up to about 10-foot boards. Small stuff goes in the front, and as that accumulates, my panel saws doesn't work, so I have to move it so that I can get a piece of sheet goods on there to cut it up. But like everything else, I thought it would be big enough when I built it, and it's nowhere near big enough now.
Okay, next up is Dan Bothart.
Okay, you'll notice in the pictures here that when Rob first said he wanted some pictures, I said, well, I'll go clean my shop up a bit and I'll make some pictures. And I didn't get it done, and it got to be Wednesday this week, and my shop still wasn't cleaned up, so I quick went down and took some pictures, and with no rhyme or reason, I just went around and took pictures and sent them to Rob. But going along with the presentation we had last week with the lathe tool rack. Well, this is my version of lathe tool rack. What I did is I built it in place. I've got 2x4s across here where I just screwed 2x4s into the studs, and then this is 3/4 inch plywood that I notched to fit over the 2x4s, so the 2x4 is actually supporting the end plates, and I just got little metal angle brackets there to hold it up against the 2x4s. And then this is another 2x4 that's drilled for the handles and it's cocked so that this is perpendicular to the top point up there, so they just sort of lean back against there. And then the ones down here, they're tilted forward with pegs and holes drilled to hold the various pieces.
Where's your lathe?
The lathe is sitting right over here, so I can just easily just reach over there and grab what I need. And then that's the wall over there. It's a pegboard. It's got other stuff hanging on the pegboard over there.
I'm assuming you do a little turning.
Well, that's what I do mostly. So that rack you just saw is right over here on the other side of this window. The lathe is on wheels, so I can move it around as needed. So there's just a mishmash there of stuff. Like I said, with no rhyme or reason. Of course, the lathe, that's my main thing I'm doing now, and there's a jewel tool there for this nice sharpening tool that you can sit and I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's got the spindle. The spindle is vertical, and then it's got a grinding wheel here with the abrasive on the bottom side of the wheel, and the wheel is slotted, so you hold the tool up underneath of it, and the wheel's spinning. You actually see through the wheel, and you can see what you're grinding, where you're actually contacting the tool. So it's a really nice little tool. And then a rigid oscillating belt sander there with the spindle. You can take the belt off and put these spindles on there. My whole wall is, well, first of all, my shop is a combination basement crawl space. It's a rancher house, and the lot is sloped down, so on the bottom end I've got about 8 feet of clearance and concrete pads poured in there. So looking back this way is back up into the house, and it's dirt up there, tapers up to where you have to crawl, really a crawl space or the other end of the house. So that's my workshop, and the benefit of that is that my wife doesn't like cobwebs, so this is my space, and she doesn't come down there and invade my space.
So you keep a few cobwebs just for that
just for that purpose, yeah. So I've got put masonite around the lower part of the walls, and then pegboard. So I've got pegboard lined around, and I'm finding I don't have enough pegboard space, so I'm thinking about how I can make multiple layers of stuff there so I can buy more stuff and hang up. Next thing over is a drill press with one of the tables. That was the best. I looked at various types of drill press tables and shop notes and various things, and I was going to build one, and I saw these out here, and those are a great table there. It's like $100, really good investment as far as I was concerned. It has the T-slots and the fence and the hold down clamps. It really works very nicely. But there's my dust collector there. I've got a barrel. The inlet pipe has an angle on it, and it's sort of pointed off, so you get sort of a circular motion there. So the stuff is sucked in here. The big stuff falls down here, and then it pulls the dust. The vacuum comes out here, and then the finer stuff collects in here, and then the real fine stuff comes out the top of there and flows out back out into here. And there you've got an air filter up there, to try to capture some of the airborne particles. See what else we got in there. Oh, back up. These mats. Go back. These are some of the mats you get out here. Those are great mats. They're about that thick, and they're really nice to stand on as opposed to that concrete floor.
Do they slide easily? Or do they have a sticky surface?
Yeah, no, they don't move around. They stick to the concrete floor good. They don't slide underneath your foot.
I had some that was kind of slid. It wasn't from here, but
yeah, I got those. I think their normal price out here they're not cheap. But I got several of them at the wood show. They'll have them like half price at the wood show. So I've got 4 of them all together now. And then there's my dust collector for the bandsaw. The belt sander is the rigid pack in there, separate tool. Okay, I think that's about it for there. And then this is a bigger back so we can see the lathe and the tool rack. There's my entertainment system up there, little TV, and I got an MP3 player with my speakers up there.
Football monitor.
Dan, how big is your shop?
I don't know. I think the width back this way, back up into the crawl space is maybe 16 feet. And then the depth of the house this way is maybe 40 feet.
You still have some area in the crawl space that's still not used? Still have some-
It's being taken up with other stuff. You know, I'm building racks to store stuff on, and it's quite a mess back there. Stuff I got stacked back there. There's my yellow air compressor or compressor unit there that I can blow stuff around with. And what else? Good. My workbench. You see, I didn't know shot my workbench here. There's my workbench that I made. But yeah, I don't see anything else in there. You know, got lights for the lathe. I got a light over here shining down that way, another one over there, and then I got one of those little neat LED lights here that I can step with a magnetic base I can stick up there. And this little rack I built just out an inch, just clamps to the upright on there, so I got a place there for some tools, and then normally I have tools down there, but I've got them all put in my toolbox getting ready for my demonstration Tuesday night, so they're not in that location. I think that's about it for there, and there's the ornaments that I've been working on for the demo. And this is coming in the door, coming in from outside, looking down the depth. And I think it's probably maybe about 40 feet, 30, 40 feet that way. So looking off there, off that side, that's back up into the crawl space. Of course, my latest, most expensive acquisition here was the saw stop. My clamp storage is over here on the wall. Radio arm saw over there.
Where'd you bring this?
The bandsaw's right here in the middle. It was a band. I got it from Highland. It's got the granite table on it. It's really, really nice, smooth table to work with.
What's that?
It's got an extension. It's the same size as these out here with an extension on it. I'm not sure what it looks bigger in the picture. And my dust collector, I didn't notice there was any pipes up there. I just didn't have with the heating duct work up there. I just didn't have room to put piping in. Plus my dust collector is not really that powerful. Like Bob was problem with his. So my dust collector is sort of centrally located, and I've got the tools that use the dust collector there. So I've just got coming off of that cardboard or that fiber canister, I've just got to pipe the hose down here, and I'll just take the hose off. I'll stretch it across here and hook it up for the radio alarm saw's got a hose come down. There's a fitting laying there, and I'll just take the hose and I'll just move the hose around and connect it. The bandsaw there and the table saw back here, and then I got another hose coming from laying down against the wall from the blade, and I'll just hook it up. So I just move the hose around and connect it to what I want to use at the time.
When you dust collector, you ever try it without that extra canister, see how much volume you get?
Well, it fills the bag up so quickly, you're continually emptying that bag.
But you get a lot more suction.
I don't think I lose anything with that canister's got it has the metal lid on it. It has a band strap around it, so it's got a pretty good seal. I don't really think I lose anything with using that canister.
Dan, you quickly went over the topic on that bandsaw there. You said something about a granite top?
Yeah, the table's got a granite table on it. Instead of a metal table, it's a granite table.
Wow.
That's Steel City. They make
granite
lathes, granite table saws, joiners, and band saws.
Yeah.
I missed something there.
Is that for weight? Is the granite for weight?
Well, it doesn't rust, and again, you have a real nice smooth surface. Yeah, it's flat. You bet the drawbacks, you can't use one of these nice magnetic fences that you can have. It comes with a fairly decent fence as it is. But I've been very pleased with it. And it's got the light up there, and it's got the quick release tension on it, just the arm over here, you can swing the arm back just to release the tension on the blade when you're not using it. And it has the features, the stuff that came with it's got the roller guides similar to what the Carter is, the fence. It had some pretty nice features in it. It was like a $700. I think I got it on sale when I had one of the sales down there. So.
You say it does have a miter slot in it too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, you know, milled into the granite top. No, there's another picture of the bandsaw. And maybe it looks so big because it was down low, sort of just moved by standing up a little look at it. Another cabinet over here, this is an old bathroom vanity, and there's some other metal cabinets in there. I got all my screws and stuff stored in there, and then this is just other miscellaneous hand tools, power tools in there. Let's see anything else there is. Okay, there's my, looking back over here's my workbench that I made. Storage cabinet back and behind there. I think I've got another picture of the workbench from face on. That's another pretty much duplicate of what you already saw. Okay, this is looking back from the lathe's perspective back the other way. So this is my sharpening stand here. This originally started out as a drill press, old tabletop drill presses. And I was going to put, my plan was to put some doors on the front here with drawers. Well, I think those hinges have been on there like that for about 15 years. And I was going to make, this is a woodpecker router table that I got with Anchor jig back years ago. And I was going to build a cabinet underneath there with drawers and stuff. And I'll probably get that cabinet done right after I get the doors done on the
Get around to it.
My plan, my goal is, I've got the water heater sitting out here. I originally had moved it back off of the concrete pad. I poured a little concrete pad back there. But then the dirt started settling back there and the concrete pad wasn't level. The water heater started tilting, so I moved it back up here. My plan is to redo that pad back there, get the water heater off. I've got a couple chop saws that's back over here. It's not in the picture. I want to make a cabinet here and have a single work surface fence and have the chop saws with the radial arm saw. I think somebody's shop tour we went on last year had that, and I really thought like that arrangement. So that's one of my plans. Right after I get the doors on here in the cabinet there, then I'll but the lathe problem is the lathe just takes up all my time. I don't have time to do anything else with the lathe now. So it's so much fun running the lathe, I just don't have time to do anything else.
Is that a gas water heater by chance?
Yes. Yeah. But I moved right now. I've got. The gas drop is back then behind there, and I got a flexible on it, so I didn't really have to disconnect. I shut the gas off and I moved the water heater, of course. But
my concern was
I've got a flexible figure there, right?
Dust in the pilot light.
What's that?
No water heater, anything? You're talking about the dust in the pilot
yeah,
light?
I was thinking about the dust and the
well, I haven't had a problem with that. You know, I'm very cautious about finishing stuff. You know, and another thing is the water heater's sitting down on the floor. Well, the code now, your water heater's supposed to be up higher off the ground. Well, that one's still sitting on the floor. So I'm very cautious about doing any kind of finishing down there with fumes and stuff.
At least your house hadn't burned down.
No.
It won't be a problem once.
What's that?
It won't be a problem
Right,
once.
yeah. Oh, there's my workbench. I built that, you know, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. But I looked through many different books and stuff on workbenches, and I just took the pieces I liked and I sort of designed it myself. But it's fairly heavy. It's got 3 layers of MDF up here. You know how heavy MDF is, Bob. So it's got 3 layers of MDF. I got the holes drilled in there. This is hard maple on the front. Got a twin screw Veritas vise on this end and a record vise down there. And this is 2x4s glued together to make a 4x4 type construction. And so the bench is pretty heavy. So you can see here, you can just see the thing there is, that's a foot pedal. You take that foot pedal out and there's there's a plate that's got wheels on it. So you pull that, step down on that, and that pushes the wheels down or lifts the workbench up. So you can, the workbench is portable. And then you can't really see it very well, but back in behind there, there's a wood rack there, and it's got vertical 2x4s on it with holes drilled at a slight angle with pipe. So the shelves are adjustable, and then the bottom part down behind there is my sheet goods storage, where on this side over here there's a hinge there, and then the wheel out here, so I move the workbench out and I can pivot that out and get sheet goods in and out from back behind there.
Wow.
After you move all your logs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything else.
Yeah.
I gather you don't get to the sheet goods all that often.
No, I don't do much of sheet goods.
They're hard to turn.
Not real hard to turn.
Mike Peace.
Can I borrow your laser disc?
How long it'll? It's a flash, not have a laser. There you go. Just show it now, I can make one out of it.
All right, this is my wood turning area. I had the luxury of building a cleat system in it, designed in my shop before when I redid my basement. So I've got this cleat system running the length of the shop. I'm real fortunate. I've got a good sized shop. It's about 14 by about 45 feet. And it's all one long wall, which has some constraints to it, but I've got a little cabinet here. This is my vacuum pump for a vacuum chuck for my lathe. So it's right here on the wall. I can lift it off these cleats and move it if I have to, but it's so I've got the valve and the hand control and everything right here where I can just reach over and grab it. And I can make little fixtures like this. I needed something to put my sander, so I just made this little thing that just hangs right here. This is that shelf you saw last week that I made for all my immediate accessories for wood turning, and I can just lift this thing up and slide it. This is an old dynamite box that my mother-in-law had, and I just turned it sideways, put a cleat on the back, and hung it up there so I could put some of my vacuum chuck accessories here. The clock, same thing. I just made one of these little wooden things here with a little cleat on it and just hung it up there. So everything is movable. Nothing's fastened down permanently to the cleat. This is an old shop light with a spring clip on it, and I just clip it wherever I need it. I bought another one that's up higher over the lathe with a floodlight in it that works pretty well. This
See, it may have gone out.
may have gone out. It looks like it's lit, but there's no power. That little fan I picked up at a throwaway from a garage sale, so it kind of blows some of the dust away from me. Next. I just built this recently at the bottom. It's really storage, it's not for ballast. I didn't find the need to put sand in it or anything, but I saw the plans.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. A lot of people, they want to put sand on everything, but I didn't want to make it hard to get underneath here. So in Firematic, you've got two places a cleat system built into the legs, and I used the higher one so I could still easily sweep. Next. And this is my Harbor Freight back. And again, you can see the cleat system moving on. I've got a pre-separator for my vacuum dust collector here. I've since replaced that with another version that's a little more efficient, but it's in the same location. Here to the right, you can see my rigid table saw. I've got my drill press over to the right. I've since moved it, but I've made a little table for it. And it's a bench top mounted on a little small filing cabinet that I put on wheels. And of course, any little jigs and fixtures I slap on this piece of pegboard, which I can move. And of course, there's the cage, safety cage that goes on the Firematic. Most people throw them away. I just didn't have the heart to throw it away. You never use them for anything, and I'm real practical. Next. This is my tool storage. Ted Riggs has one like this that I modeled mine after, and Jack Morse has one somewhat similar, but I can put most of my tools on here, and that top one is on a Lazy Susan, so it actually the bottom one is on a Lazy Susan, so the whole thing spins. I had somebody had a go-kart racer they put out on the street, so I put wheels on this thing. I can tilt it and roll it around the shop a little bit to help clean up. Next. This is a little cabinet I made with a stand on top so I can move my tailstock. That tool holder just lifts up. You can see it's got kind of an L cleat on the bottom to keep it from falling off, but I just lift it off, move it. I can slide my tailstock onto this tailstock extension on top of this cabinet. Cabinet's on wheels, and I can just roll it away. I opted for having the different drawers on the side so they wouldn't get collected with dust. And then I made this little slide top here, kind of like on a desk, a writing desk, so I can pull it out and put finishing on it or take notes or something on it and then slide it back out of the way. Next. And these are a couple of cabinets I made when I didn't have a clue how to design one. They've got, you know, kick plates down at the bottom, but the drawers, you can look at the size of those drawers. Well, when you make drawers that big, they're just useless because they'll hold big stuff, but when you put little stuff in it, everything just gets lost. So next time, I improved on that when I did that other one we just saw. I made it more like a mechanic's chest with different sized drawers, and the ones at the top are only about 2 inches. So they're much more practical. And then I've got that rigid oscillating spindle sander, which I really, really like. Because my shop is so long and thin, I have some things on both ends of the shop, like earmuffs for hearing protection. I have a set on both ends of the shop. That little blue thing at the top is some plastic jug container I cut off, and I have my eyeglasses in them, and I stick them in here, and then I've got one on the other end of the shop with safety glasses as well. Next. This is back with details of that, and the bottom lip here extends just a little bit. It's at a 45-degree incline. It extends just a little bit beyond the face, so when it collects with shavings, I can just run my finger along it and they'll drop off. And I just keep drilling more holes as I need it for the different fittings. And then I start adding pegs to the side to put calipers on. Here's my other set of hearing protection. Next. That's it. That's it. Didn't have to.
Okay, next up would be Jerry Jones.
There's only a couple of unique things here that I want to talk about. One is I have a Firematic also. And I built the boxes underneath the lathe to hold a lot of debris that naturally collects, you know. I have found though that, like I said, that that's a little too deep, so stuff gets sort of shifts down to the bottom and you have trouble finding it, you know, so I'm going to wind up modifying that. And in a later shot you'll see I've built some boxes that slide underneath here. Okay, next. That's just another shot of it with the lid closed. And the nice thing about this is when the chips fall down, they don't go in that box. You know, and I can just sweep off the top of the chips off the top of the box. It's slanted. It's hard to see that it's slanted, but it's got a slight slant to it. This was a piece of molding, by the way, that Jim McGrath brought in as the front of the box. It looks nice, but not necessary. Just a piece of scrap I had around. Next.
What's the material of that top?
Oh, that's Jim McGrath too. That's actually shelving. That's pre-finished shelving that I picked up. He brought in one time. You know, it's MDF with some sort of veneer on the outside of it.
So it's a hard, smooth finish.
Yeah, hard. Didn't have to finish it.
Yep.
Next. I still got a bunch of that stuff that he brought in. This is sort of an operational view. Here's my boxes down here that slide underneath, and there's showing all the chips on top of there. Naturally, you tend to lay things on top of that too, but wasn't the intent. You know. So.
Well, it keeps tool rests from sliding off.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not slanted enough that that slides off. Yeah, you can just put your tool rest there and it'll stay. You know. So, okay. The only other thing, next shot, a couple of shots of the back of my shop, and this is something unique that I wanted to talk about. I used to have pegboard there. I hate pegboard. I don't know about the rest of you, I hate that stuff. And what I found was this stuff, and I don't know how many of you remember John Payne. John Payne at one time had a display up in where was that, Gainesville or somewhere, that he tried to sell stuff in a consignment shop?
Buford.
Buford, okay, yeah. And he uses stuff which is commercial grade display stuff. And I've got a piece of it here that you can feel free to look at. It's mounted on the wall. It's got T-slots cut in it. The unique thing about these T-slots is you can go down to any commercial display place and you can buy stuff like this. Not a whole lot different than what you got for pegboards, okay? But it moves. What do you have to do with a pegboard? You have to pull this thing out, move it down, put it back in, you know? And this you can just slide back and forth. And they got different sizes of these, and you can also get things like shelves that mount in there and whatnot, and you can in fact use your pegboard stuff will actually mount in there, you know. So you can use your existing pegboard stuff. So this is actually just commercial display stuff, and it's MDF with some finish on it that's makes it look nice, you know. But the main thing here is, the main point here is everything. I get tired of this arrangement. I can just move it anywhere I want, up or down, sideways, or whatever. Also in that picture you see commercial cabinets. And at one point in time we had the opportunity to, I don't remember how, so one of the members knew this guy that was at the Baptist church on Buford Highway, not too far from my house, and somebody had given him a whole bunch of commercial cabinets. And they were selling them. There's oak, standard oak cabinets. That's my main storage, and they are mounted on a French cleat, which I overdid. I cut the French cleat out with 2x4. Not necessary. I thought I was going to put a lot of heavy weight in there, and I'd be better off with a 2x4. Well, it's really not necessary. It's overkill. Okay, but they aren't going anywhere. I tell you one of the drawbacks of a 2x4 though. Holds the cabinet too far away from the wall. I had to put a spacer behind the cabinet to make it level, you know, vertical. What's the drawback? What?
Is the car still there?
No, car's out in the driveway right now.
This is a car.
Tried to, nobody wants to pay for a 41 Plymouth. If it was Ford or Chevy, it'd be a different story. When you get into antiques, only buy antiques that people want. And antiques worth nothing more than what somebody's willing to pay you for, period. Okay? And that's not the best arrangement, and every now and then I'll move things around. By the way, I do have a shop vac mounted on that wall, and that back wall, because I do a lot of my final finish work and everything, because the workbench is actually out of view right over here. And I got another one on this side, and that vac is centrally located, so I can get to the either workbench with it just for local cleanup. I do have another vacuum that's a roll around one, but it's that's more of a shop vac. It does come off of there. You can take it off if you want to. Next shot.
Jerry, where can you get that commercial display?
I was just going to comment on that. The generic name for that wall product there is slat wall.
Slat wall?
Slat wall.
Slat wall.
And there is an outfit, a surplus outfit,
Specialized.
just down Peachtree Industrial. I think it's called R.L. Jones.
Yeah.
And they're just off of Winter's Chapel, where that old Sonny's Barbecue used to be. They have just scads of that kind of product and the accessories to go along with it.
I found it's the best stuff that I've ever had, you know,
Yeah.
as far as organization. And these fixtures, you can buy these at a number of places. In fact, there's one right down Jimmy Carter here. You go to Atlantic Boulevard, make a left, and go down the end of there, and they sell all of these fixtures. In fact, I bought a bunch of them from them. I don't even remember what I paid for them. They weren't a whole lot.
What's the name of that place again, Terry?
I don't remember the name of it. I could
We
find
may
it.
be talking about the same place. I think it's R.L.
No,
Jones.
this is on Atlantic Boulevard though.
Yeah.
Here's the railroad track.
Yeah.
Just cross the railroad track, next light, make a left, go all the way down to the end, it's on the right. Can't remember the name
That's on
of
the
it.
right, okay.
But they sell used shop fixtures. In fact, you can buy glass display cases if you wanted to, you know. Those
That sounds like the same place.
Yeah, it does sound like the same.
Yeah, it's not, there wasn't any Sonny's barbecue ever there,
Well,
because
no,
there's nothing
I'm
on
talking
the
about
end of
if
that
you
street.
if you kept going quite a distance, you'd run into that Sonny's barbecue.
No, it's a dead end street.
Oh, okay.
The main boulevard going that way is dead end, you gotta
Okay.
make a U-turn to come back.
Yep.
Alright, that's the other side, okay, and also got a workbench below here. In fact, you can see a router sitting on top of that. Should have shifted that view down a little bit, because there's also a ported cable dovetail jig sitting there too.
Jerry, what is that white box? I don't see too many of those.
It's called the first aid kit. That topic came up in the scroll saw meeting.
That's a big
Yeah, it's actually an old one, and I had to refill it. Somebody gave it to me, and I just mounted it on the wall there. That's the back of my shop. On the other side, where the lathe is, and in between the two is my table saw, is the second one. And the reason is, if I have a problem, I don't want to have to walk all the way to the back of my shop to get to the first aid kit, so I actually have two. And only that's just a better shot of that back wall. The scroll saw is there. Back up just a second, because there's something else here. Oh, these things are great. Those magnetic bars for holding things like chisels, because I don't have to throw them in a drawer. And if I want one, I just reach over there and grab it. You know. There was some of my clamps are here. Some of them are stacked back in the corner. Not nearly as neat as some others. Okay. I don't see any. Oh, finishing table mounted on a Lazy Susan with pegs sharpened on the end, and I can sit that on the workbench, put a small, it's small enough that I can put like a box or a turning or something, and I can spray it and I can spin it as I spray it, you know. Get to all sides of it, but it's just hanging up there on one of these, you know.
Do you remember where you got those small parts cabinets with those small drawers?
Oh, these back here?
Yeah.
I don't know, I've picked them up various places over the years, you know.
They're hard to find with the small drawers anymore.
Yeah, one of them I've had for probably 30 years.
Got big lots.
One of these, I think that one up there I've had for 30, 40 years, I don't know. But it's got screws and small nails and stuff like that in it. All right, next. That's just a better shot of that same area. You can see the workbench. The edge of the workbench here. That's the right-hand end of my workbench. Needless to say, if I have to work on anything very big, I got to move all like crap. So that's not the best idea. In fact, you see some finishing glue here and finishing stuff. There, it's hard to see, but this is a little cabinet with MDF separators in it that is sandpaper, various grades of sandpaper. I find that really neat because I can label those, each one, they have a tab on them, and I can put a label on it and tell me what grit that sandpaper is, so I can just reach in there and pull out a piece if I need it. Oh, I mentioned you can use pegboard accessories. That's what that is. I got all of my screwdrivers stuck in there, but it mounts in this stuff, you know. All right, that's pretty much it. That comes in 4x8 sheets, by the way, and it's heavy.
We've got enough time for one more here. Yeah, comes Wilder.
I don't know. I haven't looked at it close enough.
Get up there and that's your place.
Control your dust before it gets there.
I didn't clean out my shop, I just took pictures of places where I already cleaned. This is a clamp rack that I've built here. Tommy should recognize this. It's just a metal frame with a piece of plywood on it, and I've got these bar clamps that they sell at Home Depot that are pretty stout. And I've just got them hung up there, and I just roll it around to wherever I need it. Next. And then this is some inexpensive drawers that I made. These are drawers with, I think they have 1/4-inch masonite bottoms in them, and they just fit in a groove. So there's no drawer slides, really inexpensive. But as long as you're not storing anything really heavy, it's more than adequate. Now you have to be careful, you pull them out too far, they end up on the floor, but, you know, it's great for bandsaw blades and sandpaper and things like that. Next. Oh, this is my favorite tool. This is an Emmerich pattern maker device.
A real one?
A real one, yeah. It's an absolute antique.
$100?
No, it was free. I helped the
I
guy.
was asking you if you'd take it.
Oh, no.
He just offered you a.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
You misunderstood.
I was trying to twist your arm and buy it.
Yeah, it's a really nice device. If you're not familiar with it, this mechanism pivots and rotates. And there's another set of jaws on the bottom for holding small pieces, and you rotate this thing around, or you can lift the whole thing up horizontally. And that was made back in the day before CNC and that, when you have people that make wooden patterns in foundries. But it's a really nice device. And they don't make those anymore. Now Highland sells a knockoff that's pretty good, but one of the problems with these is they're real heavy. They're hard to mount because you take out it's got like a 4-inch collar that goes back in underneath the bench, and you have to remove a lot of wood, so you have to start with a pretty stout bench to mount it in. But one of the drawbacks in is it mounts on a single hinge pin right here, and if you raise this thing up and let it drop, it's on the floor, and you got a busted casting. So. Anyway, next.
How did you acquire that?
A friend of mine that lived in Snellville used to deal in antique tools. He used to make miniature antique tools. And he had that sitting behind his bench, and he didn't want to haul it around. He had a bigger one. These came in different sizes. And this is called the Universal. It's like a Universal 11 or something. And there's people out there that, like I said, Highland sells one of these. It's a Chinese knockoff. There's a guy, I think in Pennsylvania, that will sell you castings for these. So there's it's Emmert is the name, E-M-M-E-R-T.
Yeah.
There were half a dozen manufacturers that made them up through the 50s. But there's sometimes called an iron hand.
So you found it on an antiques marketplace or something?
Yeah.
Or eBay type?
Yeah, if you search Emmert.
Bill Kerfoot's probably your best shot if you want to get one right away and not look. He's a guy in Pennsylvania. And a turtleback's what, $1,000 now?
Oh yeah, yeah. Turtleback is a much more ornate vise, and these jaws pivot. This mechanism right here rotates to loosen the front jaw, and the front jaw will pivot maybe 5 degrees, and then just like we saw in somebody else's woodworking vise, there's a pivoting jaw that goes into this thing to hold chair legs or something like that.
Just what everybody needs, $1,000 vise.
Well, when it was free,
Yeah.
I just did a lot of grunt labor for that.
Bargain.
A bargain. Oh, this is just another clamp rack for pipe clamps. I started woodworking a number of years ago. These lightweight aluminum Bessie clamps went around, so all of mine are pipe clamps. And all I did was take a 2x4 and put 2x2 separators on it vertically. And as long as you put the lip of the clamp over the 2x4, they're fine. You know, you have to be careful you don't run into them because they will fall off the wall.
Got hit in the head.
Yeah, I tried out of the way, but you know.
Those are all pipe clamps?
Those are pipe clamps, yeah.
You got some weight on there then?
Wait till one of those hits you in the head someday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like I say, if I had it to do all over again, I'd definitely go with the aluminum bar clamps. They're just so much lighter, these things. You have to be careful, because one of the real hazards is you finish your project, you've got it all glued up, and then you bang it with one of these pipe clamps. So you really have to be careful. Plus the gas pipe will stain your wood if you're not careful.
Rust stain.
So there's some care you have to take with these.
Yeah, I've got a couple of 9-footers of those, and I know what you're talking about weight.
By the way, one advantage of those is you can use a pipe coupling and you can extend them to any length.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're 12 foot.
Yeah, that's what these things are here. His couplings. The only thing I have found out is that, especially the gas pipe you buy from Home Depot, is undersized. So you have to go to a commercial pipe supplier to get gas pipe to fit the Pony Jorgensen clamp, because they won't hold, they slide. It's like metal plywood. Oh yeah, galvanized digs into. Plus the first time when I moved to Atlanta and I bought galvanized pipe, I think I bought some galvanized conduit. They made me sign for a hazard form, that there's something about galvanized pipe that's a hazard.
It's not hazardous if you don't try to eat it.
Well, that's true. This is probably all came out of California. Okay, this was my homemade version of slat wall to hold my miter gauges and my push sticks and stuff for my table saw. Sits right to the right of my table saw. This is a whole lot easier than making it yourself. But I've got a couple of them like these. I just had some scrap wood and some spare spaces on the wall. And like Jerry, I don't like pegboard. This just looked better. And then this is my other slat wall for my bar clamps.
Never have enough clamps.
Never have enough clamps.
I think you got it.
Wow, you'll be getting close.
Yeah.
Looks like a clamp store. Yeah, it's about 25% of what Don Russell's got.
Oh, this is another creative idea, but you have to be careful about this. This is about going vertical in your shop. This is a mounting I made for, I've made a lot of boxes at one point in my career. And these are box clamps, miter clamps that I've got. And this is mounted over a doorway. So you don't use these all the time. And they are heavy, they put a dent in your head if it fell off. But they have a cleat on them, so that they're not going to go anywhere. But it's an easy way of using space in your shop. It's not readily available, but it's there. So. And then this was another thing about getting creative about storing. You know, you've heard of 10-ton of fertilizer to 1-ton truck. Well, that's my shop. And on the other side of my bench, I've got drawers and other things. But I thought, well, I've got this front face here. And so I put me a piece of plywood there and then made me a mounting for wooden screw clamps.
You know, so far that's 5 displays with clamps.
Yep.
How many clamps is that?
That's a fair number.
The bunch, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me know if you run out, because I live across the street from you. I'll bring some over to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ellen, you were talking about your dovetail jig. You'll notice in the top left of that picture.
Quarter cable.
Oh, the quarter cable?
Yeah, that dude's probably older than you are.
Well, I'll tell you something about the quarter cable. They don't make that one anymore. And they did make adjustable fingers as an add-on addition for that. But it was what it was. And the fingers were fixed. And once you got it tuned in, you know, it was really repeatable. As long as your router didn't have a lot of run out.
No.
This is another about getting creative about storing things over your overhead. This is just a paper, some dowels I put in on a board over the doorway to hold my bandsaw blade. The only problem I found out is you really either you have to put some kind of twist tie on them. Because you whack one of those bandsaw blades, and all of a sudden you got a half-inch bandsaw blade that's coming after you. And it always comes after you teeth first, you know.
Chase you all the way across the shop.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's a problem, but you know, there's a way of getting things out of the way. You know, I don't change my bandsaw blade all that often. So. And then this is my interpretation of how you store your turning tools. I have these on a cabinet behind my lathe. And I don't do any real big turning. In fact, I bought this really big Powermatic lathe with a bed extension. And what I find myself doing is stuff that's about, finials and things, about 2 inches long. And I could have done with one of the built-in. You're not sure what to buy when you buy it. So you get the best you can. And then, well, that's not the way life takes you, so.
What's the color coding?
But
What's the color coding?
those are labels. I just made labels on an inkjet printer. And
I was gonna suggest you must have consulted with Ken Vickery on the layout of that thing and having labels and color codes. Looks like something straight out of Ken's notebook.
yeah. But it was an easy way to store a lot of tools without putting them in drawers. And my lathe is pushed up against the wall. I think that was it.
I think we don't have much time for any more. So that concludes today's program. I wanted to see what y'all thought about this.